god, not in the year of the Barbie movie.
Hi and welcome back. My name is Hannah and today is a International Women's Day special. So I was on Twitter or X the other day and I got recommended an article in Forbes. I became very interested in it because of the title of the article. It says, women held only 35% of speaking roles in 2023 films, according to study. And what I love the most about it is that it starts out with, in a year when Barbie, Beyonce, and Taylor Swift revealed the economic purchasing power of women and girls, female characters were still grossly underrepresented on the big screen. I love how we think that the Barbie movie invented like feminism in film. But anyway, this is actually a topic that I really enjoy talking about, and I gave some like presentations about it, and I also teach about this, and I don't know, I just have thoughts. So, and since it's also International Women's Day today, I thought I would just talk to you about this. This particular study is by Dr. Martha M. Lawson. I don't know how to pronounce the name. It's from the Center for the Study of Women in Television and Film at San Diego State University. And since 2002, they studied the top 100 grossing films and look at kind of gender disparities. I didn't read the whole report. It's not super long, but it's statistics. So they count things, basically. They look at how many women are shown, what is their race, what is their class, how many speaking lines they have, are they the protagonists, how many women are involved in the production of these films, etc., etc. And of course, it's quite interesting. I will link the study below. It's American. They even state that they look at the 100 top films, but they take out international features and kind of re-releases. So it's very American. Which is fine. It's, you know, Americans are allowed to study US American things, I guess. I wonder what would like a global scale look like though. Like if you would take in, I don't know, the whole of Bollywood films into it, like how would it change this like statistics. But what I actually wanted to talk about is more about a different side of how we can look at women on screen. Because I think that these statistics are really important, and I don't want to undermine these studies. These kind of studies, I would view them as like these springing boards. Is that what it's called in English? You know, that you can like jump off of to do more qualitative and more critical research about what is happening. Because this in itself is already quite interesting, since according to these reports that they've been doing since 2002, the tendency got worse. Slight correction from editing, Hannah. The tendency got better over time overall, but it's worse than the previous year. And in the Forbes article, they also quote the researcher who did the study, who kind of says that maybe because Barbie took up so much space in film and marketing and like pop culture in the past year, it kind of also had an effect on like other female leads. I think that's quite an interesting way of looking at it. I don't know about film productions that much to be able to comment on that, so if someone does, please let me know. But I do think that film productions take longer than, you know, than just that kind of marketing period, so I don't know how much it would really affect. But what I find very interesting is that beyond these statistics, beyond these numbers, beyond counting how many female or female presenting characters are on screen who speak, what other ways can we use to measure the representation of women on screen? One of the very famous ones is the Bechdel test. I think it got quite popularized. Fun fact, Bechdel also wrote the graphic novel Fun Home that was turned into a musical. It's one of my favorite musicals. Alison Bechdel came up with this way to measure women on screen. It's actually, I think, also was written in a graphic novel first, where like two characters talk about it. It's when you look at if there were two women talking to each other about something other than a man. And they have like this database. You can also link that. You can look into this database and then like check the films. And there are also like debates about it. So like, for example, if in a James Bond film, the two characters are talking about Bond, but it's their job, does that count as talking about a man or not? I love it. I think it's really fun. Of course, it's like not necessarily a very scientific method, but I think this very simple question actually tells a lot about how women characters are written. But what I do, or how I think about media representation, is more about kind of a critical way of looking at it. So not just whether there is someone like a body on the screen. And this does not only go for women, to be honest, this goes for any identity. So we can talk about race or class or ability or sexuality or religion. But beyond that body being there on screen, what happens to that body? What is the story? How complex, how in-depth, how well thought out that character is? Because if we take, for example, LGBTQ plus representation on film, we can see that, we can feel, I think, kind of just by, I don't know, browsing on Netflix, there is a lot more LGBTQ plus characters, and they get to be the protagonists of their stories, and in a sense, of course, that's fantastic. But at the same time, a lot of the times, the one kind of identity that these characters have is the fact that they are LGBTQ plus, meaning that it's not usually the case that someone is that it's like a spy movie where then the main character happens to be a lesbian, and then the movie is about, you know, this woman being a spy, but then they just happen to be a lesbian. I'm not saying that this doesn't exist, of course it does, but in general, like, LGBTQ plus stories are mostly about being LGBTQ plus. And of course, like, we came a long way, right? Like from, I don't know, from like the gay best friend arc, but still there are different ways we could look at how these media representations are. The reason why media is very important when we talk about this kind of representation is because media provides powerful models for us. So when we want to talk about women on screen, or men, or any other identity on screen, we want to look at these ways of how gender is represented. And most often than not, these are based on stereotypes. We know from research that anyone, so it doesn't matter their like identity in general, are represented as more attractive, physically attractive, but also in their personality than the average. And it's likely that they will serve as aspirational models for us. And these media representations shape us directly, so based on the media that I consume as a viewer, but also indirectly, because people around us, like your friends or colleagues, or when you're in school, your teachers or your classmates, all watch and consume a lot of media, and we also have this kind of societal like shared understanding of these kind of models. From research, we also know that men and women, or boys and girls, are all shown in a stereotypical way on screen, but women are more likely to be stereotypical on films and series. And on average, there has been kind of historically like a 60% more representation for boys and men than for girls and women. So this 35% that Forbes says is quite similar over time. And I think this is very important because we talk a lot about women, and it is International Women's Day, and this video is also mostly about this women representation, but I do think that there is a flip side to it, and we talk much less about men and men's representation. But it's very important to realize that it's not only women who are stereotypically represented on screen. Men are also very stereotypical, and they are also represented more idealized and more attractive than average. And if they break the kind of boundaries of masculine norms, then they are also punished for it. There are some really good examples of this, that, for example, girls' bodies are more likely to be commented on, but boys' behavior is also policed. And there's this example from a Disney show, I'm not entirely sure, but there is a young boy character who is celiac. and he is made fun of for not being like manly enough because he can't eat gluten. So, you know, that's also a kind of stereotypical way of representing men that is not very healthy or welcome. And then also we know from studies that, for example, mother characters or parent characters are more likely to be represented as like working moms, or mothers are more nurses or teachers or assistants, while fathers are lawyers and policemen and whatnot. So we know that there is generally a decrease in stereotyping women on screen, but there are still some big disparities between how women and girls and men and boys are represented. For example, women and girls are still 7 times more likely to be shown naked or in revealing clothing than men. Great example, Oppenheimer. I love Oppenheimer, but I think that scene with Florence Pugh, it was so unnecessary. It doesn't add to the story. It was just so she would be naked. I think actually the whole storyline would have been much stronger if they don't sleep together. But anyway, when we look at media effect research, we also know from several different meta-analyses, so studies looking at studies about media effects, that there is an association between frequent television viewing and expressing gender stereotypical beliefs. So essentially, the more you watch TV, the more you believe the stereotypes about women and men that you see on screen. And these effect sizes are quite small, but they are very important because they show that there is a consistency in these effects, that media shapes our gendered beliefs. And some scholars would also argue that these small effects compound over time. So it's not like you only watch one movie in your life, but you're consistently faced with these gender stereotypes. They kind of add on to each other. And we also know from studies that frequent exposure to media stereotypes are associated with stronger beliefs in traditional gender roles. So circling back to the very first study, I really appreciate these kind of statistical findings, and someone takes the time to like count all these things, and it's super important. But as I said, I think it's a springboard to more complex and critical studies or research or thoughts about media and representation, because it's not only about how many women are on screen, it's about what kind of women and what kind of stories are on screen. So if the women that we see on screen, even if it would be half of the characters that we see, but they are victims of their circumstances, they don't get to be the heroes of the stories, their role is only to be there for men or to serve men or to be mothers, then it also has a very negative effect. So only looking at how many times women are shown on screen is not necessarily enough to talk about representation. There are so many different ways we can talk about representation, and it's also one of my favorite topics in media. My favorite scholars and a lot of my favorite papers are about representation, so I will definitely talk about this topic more. So thank you so much for joining me for this video. I hope it was insightful and maybe a bit thought-provoking for you. Do the Bechdel test in the next film that you watch. I will see you in the next one. Bye!